Hi, and welcome to Faith, Art, and Tiny Houses. I'm your host, Carmen Shank. Welcome back to the podcast. My guest today is Brenda Mason. She is a tiny house speaker, author, and a downsizing consultant, and her story is really fascinating to me. She moved from Utah to Virginia, and she moved from a 3,100 square foot, 5-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-car garage home to a 310 square foot tiny house. In her case, that is a converted motor coach. And you know what? She did this transformation in 31 days. And I think there's so much that we can learn for Brenda in making a big move like that and really making the choice to go wholeheartedly after the transformation that you want in your life. So welcome to the podcast today, Brenda. Brenda Mason is the author of Creating Your Home Oasis. And I've read this book. I should give you the whole title, The 31-Day Guide to Creating Your Clutter-Free Home Oasis. I read this book on the way home from a tiny house festival, and I was delighted to find it's incredibly systematic and really helpful. There's some really helpful stuff in this book, and Brenda's with me today, so we'll get not just the book version, but the live in-person experience. Brenda, tell me about your journey. 31 days?
Yes.
You downsized in 31. Tell me what that was like.
You know, I think it was crazy, but considering that I have always been trying to downsize and organize my life, it was probably the most freeing thing I've ever done. And because I actually had to get it completed, and I really did have 31 days to get it done. So I actually took, a couple of days less. It was really great to get to the estate sale and have everything done. I just highly recommend it. Like I said, I'd been trying almost 33 years of married life at the time to try to get it done. And one day just never happened. I was always waiting for one day. So,
well, and you had the full professional kitchen. You had a big house, lots of bedrooms, lots of bathrooms. And tell me a little bit about your story, because you lived overseas and brought things home, and there was a reason why you had a really big house, right? Because
yes.
you had been collecting for some time.
Right. So, I'll give you the background real quick. I was only child. So mine right there gives you an awful lot. So kind of the tagline there. And so I had always taken good care of my things. I knew my great-grandparents, my grandparents. I still have both of my parents alive as I'm talking to you right now, as well as my things and my daughter's things. So every time, let's see, in 1982, I got married and we were going overseas to Germany and we put everything into storage while I was creating my brand new household. And we were in a foreign country, and I just enjoyed Europe and all the wonderful things there, traveled a lot, and their children, and did all that. Then it was time to come home. Well, I had to bring everything home with me because I loved it. So I brought everything home. We went to San Antonio, Texas. And so we brought things in from storage that I had left behind, and I incorporated it with everything from Germany. So we had a larger home. And then a couple of years later, we were on our way to South Korea. So I put everything in storage.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So went to Asia. Love the Asian culture. Oh. Well, I like every culture I'm at, just the way we do. So anyhow, and I collected all these things over there, and we were there for a couple of years, and, so I had even more dishes and more gadgets and a whole nother culture. Brought it all back, pulled stuff from San Antonio back to Virginia. And so again, a larger home. We lived there for a while. We had our children after being married for a little over 10 years. And then from there we were headed, there were other little moves and stuff in between. It never dawned on me to let anything go. I just always, so I never had a storage unit. I've never had a storage unit, but in a way, my home was always my storage unit.
Wow.
So technically, I paid a lot through the years because it was constantly going to a bigger and larger home to accommodate everything. And, if you can get a bigger home, you're going to get organized. And I'd go buy all these things to get it all organized. I knew I had the stuff, but what box and what garage or room or attic or wherever, had no idea. But I knew I had the stuff. And I just couldn't let it go. And so when we did move out to Utah, I was still married at the time, and his company paid for our move. And it was over $20,000 back in 2000 Massive truck. They came and they packed everything. Somebody said, you got to make sure the trash is out because I'll pack that too, which is true. So I made sure the trash was gone. So I didn't take like the kitchen garbage, but I took everything else with me. Went into this huge home because cost of living was a little better. So anyhow, that's kind of our, kind of how we get into that, and build. So.
Well, so what was the thing that made it time to let go and
Okay.
made it time to learn how to just there had to be something that created the time that Brenda was finally ready to let go because you were quite the collector.
I was, and and so a lot of realization came to me over that 31 days. And to back up just a little bit, while I was in Utah, I did go through a divorce out there after 24 years, and I didn't. Well, we ended up selling the house, but I went to a large home. I had 2 daughters. I had all that stuff from all those years.
Yep.
I had 2 Alaskan Malamutes. I was a
Oh, cool.
photographer. I was a chef. I was a a tour guide, room mom. I just had it all. So all of a sudden I decided I needed to rent a house, and somebody said, why don't you get a smaller place? It doesn't cost so much money. And I thought, well, I wouldn't fit in a smaller house. So I'd never even considered it. So
Mhm.
I did. Almost 80% of the little bit of income that I had went to a rental property to pay somebody else's mortgage. But that was okay. I was surrounded by my stuff. I had my girls. I tried to keep their life as normalized as possible.
Mhm.
Which wasn't the biggest, smartest move on my part in hindsight. However, in answer to your question, in 2015, and I know you've already read in the book, but others that haven't, my youngest daughter, still at home with me, was graduating from high school. And I wanted to get back to Virginia, but in the back of and of course, almost all of my money had gone into the rents that I was paying.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get back to Virginia, but I knew in 2000 it was $20,000 to get us out there. And I knew I had collected over the 15 years I was in Utah, even more stuff
Wow.
than I originally had. So I was looking at like $30,000 to $40,000 to get back to a place. And I thought, well, even once I get back there, I would be like in massive overwhelm because as you know, the DC area is a lot higher.
Yeah.
And even to get something that would fit all my stuff. And I was in a tailspin.
Wow.
And I thought my daughter was coming to a college back in Virginia. And then in the last minute, she switched it to Missouri. But I'd gone back for a funeral, and I looked around, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I saw a couple smaller homes that were still quite pricey. And I thought about a garage. I started reading about the tiny houses on wheels.
Yes.
That was just coming in. And I thought, this will be great, but my house isn't going to fit.
Yeah.
Stuff. And so then I thought, and then the more I looked at it, I thought, I don't want the mortgage. I don't want the rent. It's going to be just me. It can be closer to my family. And I'm really good with the wheel and deal of things and value, believe it or not, after all the year and all that stuff. It's one of the reasons I had so much stuff, because I loved yard sales and all that.
Oh, yeah. Too. You're a bargain hunter.
I am a repurpose. So all this tiny living fits into me. I wanted to homestead, etc. Yeah. So, but by then it was already the end of February, and she was graduating in, like the beginning of June, end of May, beginning of June. I had no money saved. I'd given back almost $1 million in alimony. I mean, I was a simple person, and I was getting ready to do this. So I just had to start looking at my options, and I could not get tiny house living and simpler living has come a long way, even in the past 4 years. But at the time I couldn't get. I have land in Virginia. That's the other thing I wanted to say. So I thought I'll go back to my land, and I need to put something quick on it so that I can bring my stuff back. Couldn't get answers to legalities of a tiny house. So anyhow, I started thinking outside the box, and of course, by then this time it's almost April. And I contacted people that had a bus, like an old Greyhound bus, that I had them let them store it on my property. And I knew they were trying to sell it. So I contacted them to find out if they'd sold it. And they said the whole point of this is thinking outside the box, but they had not sold it yet. And they just wanted out from under it. And I asked them how much they wanted for it. And they were very grateful and thankful that I had let them keep it there over the time. And I got it for $1. You said,
oh my gosh!
gosh.
So I actually went. They said if you come back, when you come back, not if, when you come back, we'll meet. We'll go to DMV. You can pay $1, and we'll transfer the title.
Yeah.
So I got this
So you're
already
mortgage free.
converted. Yes. Oh yes. There's no way.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And so by that time, it was like middle of April. I gave 16 days notice to, I was a floral manager at the time with a grocery company. And I gave them my notice because I thought in 30 days, if I can do this yard, do a yard sale, figure out how some of my stuff, I'd make as much as I was making at that point. And then to come back, I ended up doing it myself. I bought a 5x8 trailer. And so, you start thinking outside the box. And you start thinking outside the box. So you asked why. I don't even remember what you asked me. I was just telling you my story.
No, it's all right. Keep telling the story because all of this is helpful. I mean, just the whole idea that I love it that you had a foundation, you had a patch of dirt, and that you were able to put something on it that left you mortgage free.
Yes.
I don't know who can buy a house for $1, but you've done it. And I think that's a huge blessing.
Right.
And,
yes.
That's huge. Okay. So you're expecting 30 grand to get back across the country, but you've already you've thought outside the box. You've got a trailer, a 5x8 trailer.
Yeah, Wells cargo trailer. I went and bought one brand new because it was going to have all my life possessions.
Better not leak.
Right. And then I had I decided to do that. I will tell you this, in moving, one of the things in simplifying, whether you're going to stay in your current home, you're selling your house, you're going smaller, or you choose to go tiny like I did, there is a cost to what you're keeping. And that's why, I'll tell you, the rule of 4, I think you need to create your home oasis, and you need to keep the things that you honestly need, that you really use and you truly love, and rehome everything else. So it's about creating your own personal oasis. Mm-hmm. So in order to do that, and also the simplicity for me was the freedom of the debt, simplicity of the usage of money. So, I was still, even if I downsized, I was still having to look at getting things from A to B, from the west to the east. And I looked at how to do that. I looked at the iPods, and there's many other brands. But then I was looking at, they would bring it out and put it at the prep place for a fee, and you could load it yourself, and then they for fee will take it according to the mileage to wherever you want to go. Well, where I was going, they would not just bring it and leave it. And then, then you get into rent. So it's like a portable storage unit. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. I was looking at a minimum. The cheapest way I could find to go cross country was $3,500.
Wow.
So I ended up purchasing a brand new Wells Cargo, and I got an extra tire because it's like real tires type things on it. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, so I spent about $2,100. Title, own it. I thought, but then once I got back to where I was going, I could have my items right with me. So I had, even though it was storage, and I thought then once I got done, and then so I wouldn't have to pay rent, wouldn't have to go into town an hour away with my Suburban, which was fabulous, but to go back and forth. And so for about the $2,200 by the time all was said and done, I traveled with that stuff across country because I needed to bring my car back anyhow. And so I brought my items with me in that, and then I could park it. And I thought once I get it emptied, I would at least possibly be able to turn around and sell it.
Yes.
If I only got $500 for it, it was no extra money out of my pocket.
Right.
I might get some of it back, and you wouldn't get any of that with the storage company. So it's about thinking of what's going to work for you.
Yeah.
Simplifying whatever it is and not living in fear, just going ahead and doing it.
And just realizing that even though there are these resources out there, there's probably still another way to do it. So that's where our creativity and adaptability comes in, because there's the $30,000 way to move across the country. There's the pod way, which is $3,500 maybe.
Minimal,
and then, but you know what? That's not the only two options. And I love that that's what you kept looking until you found something that suited your situation.
Right.
And that creativity is really foundational to the whole tiny house movement, because that's what started this thing in the beginning,
Exactly.
And so I love that that's that you're sharing that part of your journey as well. So carry on from there.
So, and even when we lived overseas in Germany and South Korea and different places, I loved staying in the 5-star hotels and some of the beautiful things we did.
Sure.
And yet I was fine being in a little 100 square 100-foot overnight hut on a trail with no running water or whatever. So it was a little easier for me because I always
Yeah.
had that sense of adventure,
Yeah.
wanting to do things. So I was okay.
That's
And
great.
again, I could not get an answer. I'm flipping back to the other thing. I could not get an answer to the legalities when I was trying to figure out how to put things on. I didn't have any money anyhow. So when I had the bus, a lot of times, well, the bus had already been, as I'd said, on my property for like almost 10, 15 years, the
Yeah.
bus on the property. And it moves from, season to season occasionally. So I just didn't think it'd be an answer. So I just went ahead and did it. And I thought, if I have to leave it, I'll have to leave it. But until then, and I've been living mostly off grid, actually in the bus for a little over 4 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
So talk to me about that kitchen, because you had an amazing kitchen and a collection of all kinds of things. What were the things that you held on to, and what were the things that it was time to let go? And what was that process like for you?
In my process that I do, kitchen for me, many things in it were heartstrings, and I always say you do your heartstrings towards the end. So I already knew the size of the kitchen I was going to, which is really small. My entire bus is still smaller than the kitchen that I had in Utah. And actually, in all of my rental properties, I always had a good sized kitchen. So, in answer to your question, I knew that I'd be mostly off grid. So my two Cuisinarts with all the attachments and everything, I just wasn't going to be able to use them. And I thought,
Right.
oh, to have to wash those by hand, it's really neat to make a huge mess when you throw it in a dishwasher. My one kitchen had two large ASCO professional dishwashers in it. And I think when I first heard about you, after already going through all that and being back here and knowing that you had the restaurant and the chef, that's why I was one of the many reasons I was so excited to meet you, because I thought, oh, she'll get it. And I
Oh
think
yeah,
you'll
I
do.
get it.
So I just knew I was going to be like camping. So in answer to your question, I went through my kitchen with the honestly need, really use, truly love. Now, all three of those things did apply to almost everything in my kitchen. So then I had to just know what my ultimate goal was and where I was going. So the things that I kept, I didn't keep any of the Cuisinart stuff, but I did keep, I've got 3 professional knife sets, one from Germany. One's actually a Tupperware Chef Series, which is weird, but I really like those. And then a couple other things that I picked up from individual things throughout the way. I didn't let a single one of those go. I kept every single one of them, but they weren't really big, so that was something I could keep. I kept my KitchenAid because I thought, it's got, and I don't use it very often, or a lot of times I'll put it in the back seat of the Suburban if I'm going somewhere and take it with me. I can use it. I've used it a couple times there, but I believe you were one of the ones that I heard say that, and also in my background too, back in the day, we didn't have all these fabulous gadgets. People
Right.
had a whisk,
Yeah.
a wooden spoon that they'd whittled out of a tree limb or something. My uncle, I've got 2 of those that my great uncle did from, years and years ago. He had those, and they're one of the best things that I used. So I kept spatula. I went through all my cookie cutters. I had hundreds of cookie cutters. So there's still a couple, some of those had to come with me, but not what I had. So, and I did go with, I think like 2 really neat bowls that I like because it's just me. So I had the 2 bowls, and I said I can always pick things up at yard sales and things. I'm to the point now where things don't have to match. I think it's really neat to be eclectic and have, now instead of having 4 sets of 12 place setting each china, I would pick up, if I saw something out at a yard sale or something, I could get like 1 set or 2 pieces. That's probably how I would do it. And, just make it eclectic. Oh, I just love that.
Yeah.
So I did keep because I was creating my oasis. So I am not one to say you can only have 5 cookbooks.
Yeah.
Or consider I had hundreds of
I've got a
cookbooks,
lot
the
of
other books I could let go of, but I kept them, I go through my system. So I did keep, and I had tablecloths, and the day of me having my dining room table that seated 12 people, so I could put each one of those place settings, I knew those would be gone.
Yeah.
I could do that by laying a blanket out on the yard if I wanted to, or I don't do that because there's so many, anyhow.
There's so much nature.
Yeah, live in a forest, I'd have a lot of spiders and
Yeah.
mosquitoes to come with that.
Yep.
But picnic tables, there's all kinds of things you can do. So I let go of tablecloths that I was going to use one day that I had never used that I'd picked
Wow.
up. Oh, in Belgium, beautiful hand lace, but those good other people that were going to use them. So I kept my knives. I actually kept my 12 place setting of my expensive china that I'd gotten in Germany, and by choice. And I kept my grandmother's china.
Mm-hmm.
Everyday dishes were china as well, heavier china. I let those go. I let all my Christmas dishes go.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were certain things that I did keep, and I do eat on china in my place.
We do too.
Yeah, and my grandmother used to you'd give her something, and of course from the Depression days era, but she would open it up and she'd love it, and then she'd rewrap it back in.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
In the tissue paper and put it away for one day or so it wouldn't get ruined. And I always remember thinking, I'm gonna use those things. So her filled to the brim kitchen stuff that I had, but it was fun to watch people at these because I had a estate sale. It was fun to watch them buy the stuff and take it. Yeah,
sure.
So that was fun. Yeah,
because it was like going to a boutique kitchen store
to come
to your estate sale.
It was, so that was fun.
I thought I was in heaven.
Yeah, and nobody. I'm jumping way ahead, but nobody knew that because I was the one collecting the money in there. If anybody had questions, I was it. And so they thought I was a new estate sale company in town. Gotcha. They'd not seen me, and but it was, and I never told anybody it was my stuff. I wasn't numb. I was really present at the time, but I just didn't want anybody to know it was me. So it was fun to hear people talking to me, because an estate sale, I think now they have living estate sales, but I wasn't aware of that. So, and I'd never really been to an estate sale. I went to two to see how they were done. I had somebody who was a professional estate sale goer, and I said, I can't figure out the flow of how to let people come in. Didn't want my stuff stolen.
Right.
And to get out. It was interesting because as people were waiting in line to make their purchases, pennies on the dollar, but still they were my pennies.
Yes.
So,
yep.
But it was interesting to hear that the person who had passed away from that home had apparently been a photographer, a school teacher, a crafter, a chef. Definitely, I heard the chef.
Yeah.
Just all these things, because I had so much stuff, an antique collector or dealer.
So they were making assumptions about you, not knowing it was you.
Exactly. But it was, and it was interesting because you know what? They were right. I was every single one of those things. And in the very beginning, you asked about it being hard. The very beginning, I was standing in my office that was just piled, I had like a little trail to get in, but that was before I'd started decluttering. That was just life,
right.
Complications of it. And I remember standing there and just, I stood in tears at one point because it hit me that, because I had a good marriage, but I had a marriage that was filled with indifference, and that's as much as I'll say on that. But I was always thinking if I could, because there's a lot of money involved with us too, and I thought if I could only have the right table setting for the dinner party we were having. I know you'll relate, but other people can relate to that, and if you can't, that's okay too. You still got a lot of stuff you got to deal with.
I got it.
Yeah. But I was just thinking your listeners. So anyhow, but I stood there and I remembered thinking that all of this stuff is a part of me, but it is not who I am.
Yeah.
And even down to, I've got this little teepee that from when I was 5 years old, I remember being on an Indian reservation and the guy dressed in the outfit. And I kept that just because it's a memory. But there were a lot of realizations that hit you when you're going through it, and you get stronger and you realize that you are a person and you are not what you own, and your stuff really doesn't represent who you are as a being, maybe as a person, and your interests. So all those things were of interest. Oh yeah, and I was a dog groomer because of course I had my two Malamutes, and I, did the sledding, and did this person doing Iditarod because I had all that stuff, and so yes, I am, and I have been, and all of that is still a part of me, but it's not. Any one thing is not who I am. So that's where the simplification and the intentionality and the mindfulness comes in, because I was always trying to be good enough and to prove through things that I was good enough to be loved.
Wow.
That I really was somebody. And the stuff doesn't do it. It's shiny, it's fleeting, and just standing on my own, I am all those things. I don't need to have every single thing around me to prove. And that's what I would do. I would collect every kitchen thing to prove that I could make really good macaroni and cheese, chef quality. Well,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
What I need for that is like cheese, real cream,
Yeah.
good noodles, make my own noodles, whatever I do.
Right.
But I didn't have to prove because I had a pasta maker and a fancy cheese grater that I could make chef quality macaroni and cheese. You just do it. So it was very freeing. And I think you have to go through your items and it starts freeing you up. And there does become a huge simplicity, but it gives you your life back.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Yeah.
And it gives you the ability to say, this is who I am, not this thing.
Yes. Yes.
This is who I am. This is not who I am. This is who I am.
Yes.
This is not who I am.
No.
I think that's a beautiful kind of liberation. I mean, we talk about the freedom from having to care for it all, and that's a beautiful liberation too.
Oh,
but
yes.
just being able to separate myself from my stuff and still be me.
Yes.
I think that's a real gift that we get in the tiny house community, because we let go of it, and guess what? We're still us.
Yes.
And all of those life experiences, all of that expertise, all of that's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you brought that up, because it really is foundational.
Oh, it is.
Because so much of marketing is telling us that we've got a problem and this product is what's going to fix it.
Yes.
And so, first of all, we believe that we have the problem, and that's our first mistake.
Right.
And then we shell out the money to get the thing, and then guess what? We probably still have the problem.
Yeah.
Even though it was a fake problem to begin with.
Exactly.
So it's really cool to see this other layer of liberation that can come from really getting intentional about living in simplicity. And if that means a big move and a big purge like you did, then there can be a lot of power in that.
Right.
Thank you for joining me today. My guest has been Brenda Mason. She has the website Smaller Living, Huge Life. She's an author and just a real helpful resource when it comes to making the big transition of reducing the amount of stuff that you own and starting another new adventure. And I think that's really, she's brought up some really interesting points for us to consider. And I'm actually going to go ahead and continue this conversation in our next Tiny House Tuesday episode. You can find my entire conversation with Brenda at simplifymy.life. And we sat down and talked for quite a while about all of the things that we learned going tiny and the transformation that's made for both of us. And I love her story, and I know that you'll find her resources helpful as well. So check her out at smallerlivinghugelife.com, and thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. You can follow me on Instagram at Carmen Rose Shank. You can subscribe to my channel on YouTube, please do. And you can download us on iTunes. Theme music is composed by William Kirkpatrick, lyrics by Louisa Stead, arranged and performed by classical guitarist Jonathan Crispin. Show notes available at carmenshank.com.